Playoffs? You want to talk playoffs? Everyone's dropping like flies. Some of these teams want to get out to opening day just healthy. Everyone's breaking down in spring training, but someone has to win the American League Central. Why not your Cleveland Guardians?
Tanner Bobby of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
2 weeks to opening day, and everybody is dropping like flies in the American League. We're all just trying to get to April healthy. If you have not had an MRI lately, then you are not a member of the New York Yankees pitching staff. It's rough out there. Hope you're all well. Welcome on to a Monday episode of Locked On Guardians. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're covering the Cleveland Guardians every single day. We are free everywhere and anywhere you get podcasts and on YouTube as well. Welcome on into Everydayers. And welcome on. And if you're new here on today's episode, we'll talk about some camp updates from over the weekend for the Guardians, some injury updates for the Guardians as well. They're trying to stay healthy. And then we will talk today about, is the American League wide open? The American League right now is a lot of injuries, just a lot of stuff going on across the league. Can the Guardians take advantage? We'll get into that today. Before we get into that, I am Justin Latta, and I have been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007. I served as the editor-in-chief of Guardians/Indians Baseball Insider for about 4 years. I have been a freelancer at the News Herald and the Morning Journal for 4 more years. I'm also at nextyearincleveland.substack.com and Prospects Live, and here with all of our favorite people for our favorite half hour of the day.
I am Jeff Ellis. I have a cough that will not go away. It just won't quit. Before this podcast, we've passed 1,400 episodes, by the way. I was a national writer on Scout, and 24/7 on Prospects and the Draft. But right now, I'm here to talk to you about the Cleveland Guardians and about how, I mentioned to you off air, what we're seeing right now is why this team went all in on pitching depth. It's rough out there.
It is rough out there. MRI machines are definitely benefiting right now. If you could invest in an MRI machine, do it, because you might need some work. Before we get further into today's episode, is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, if you're a new customer, you can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So visit FanDuel.com today for that great offer. Let's start with the Guardians' health troubles over the weekend. So we did hear over the weekend that Eric Sabrowski, who has been held out of games this spring training, with first it was a hamstring issue, and then it was just kind of holding him back because he is a 2-time Tommy John survivor, and he pitched a lot last year. He went through a lot last year. Well, now it's forearm soreness, elbow soreness. Never a great thing. Not for anybody, especially when you've had two Tommy John surgeries. Nobody likes to hear that. So Sabrowski is having some anti-inflammatory injections. He's going to be shut down and reevaluated. So he is not going to be on the opening day roster more than likely, which is not really a shock because he hasn't pitched, and we kind of figured that was coming anyway. But that's your second lefty right now, so which begs the question further about Doug Nikhazy, and it might even be worth talking about someone like Logan Allen too, because he's had quite the interesting spring. And if they choose to go with Tristan McKenzie out of the gate in the 5th spot just because, then there's no reason they can't have Logan Allen out of the bullpen. Joey Cantillo was done in a little bit too, so both those guys could serve in that role. Plus, one of those guys could wind up being your insurance for Tristan McKenzie, where if things don't go well, then boom, you've got somebody already on the major league squad that can jump into his spot, take those innings, even though you'd have Jacob Junis, who we'll talk about here in a second as well. The other bit of news was Andrew Walters. So I think we talked about this last week, and I talked to our insiders about it today. If you want to become an insider, by the way, the link is on the YouTube screen. It's in your episode description as well. If you want to be an insider, we were chatting about that over the weekend. So Andrew Walters hadn't pitched since February 24th. It was a third of an inning. It was a rough outing. He was scheduled to pitch on the 27th, did not appear in that game. He has been under some shoulder soreness / inflammation. He was scheduled to pitch a bullpen on Sunday, the March 9th, not in a game, but in a bullpen. So we will hear probably Monday morning as you're listening to this from Stephen Vogt how that bullpen went. We'll see where things go. But yeah, definitely points in the direction of all in on pitching, right, Jeff? Not just Luis Ortiz, but Jacob Junis and Paul Sewald. I think that really points in the direction that they had to do that, because if you haven't heard, everyone on the Yankees, everyone's elbow on the Yankees is cranky. The Twins have some pitching injuries right now as well. Depth is really hard to come by right now. And then the Tigers are employing Alex Cobb, who I don't know if you heard. I don't think we talked about in the podcast yet, but Alex Cobb's on the Tigers over the offseason, and he had made 3 starts last year, and he's making $16 million. I don't think we've brought that up yet.
No, I don't think we did either. I don't think that's come up once on the show. But any way you look around it, my only knock on considering Logan Allen for the pen is just the starting pitching depth. I almost feel like you want to have 3 guys you can trust in AAA, just in case. But yeah, right now with the team in general, it's nice to have options, because, and the other big thing too, the other thing I was talking about off air beforehand is the nice thing is a lot of their injuries have been to, not central figures, not known guys, not the guys you're counting on for huge parts. I mean, guys who you're hoping would help this team and maybe be the part of the best outcome, but every team has injuries. And right now, all things considered, it's been a relatively minor health spring training.
It has been. And the Guardians had some really bad luck with injuries a year ago, right? You had Shane Bieber, you had Tristan McKenzie. McKenzie was never really hurt, though. But Gavin Williams, that the flu bug going around camp to start last year, which they've had again, too, which is really interesting, which is why Jacob Junis hadn't pitched until on Sunday. His first outing on Sunday, I thought, at least statistically, went really well. The game was not broadcast on video, but we did get data from it, and pretty good outing from Jacob Junis in 1 inning. It won't take long to build him up. I know they said they want to have the option of him being a starter, but he's the guy you can build during the season. So he threw 14 pitches, clean inning, 1 strikeout, just 3 outs, didn't have a whole lot of effort to the inning, topped out at 90 with the fastball. So going to have to build up a little bit there, I think, in terms of velocity, but also coming off a bug. But that's a guy I think you can bring into the bullpen to start the year, and he can build himself up to start throughout the year if you absolutely need him. So good on the men for Jacob Junis there. But yeah, there just hasn't been any major injuries. I know a lot of people want to point at the Chase DeLauner injury. I think we can get into this later, and we talk about how wide open the AL Central is, or the American League is, and how that impacts things, because I think it does impact things a little bit. But, knock on wood, there's still 2 weeks to go until opening day, but things are looking a little better in terms of health-wise for the Guardians than they are some other teams, and sometimes that's half the battle is the war of attrition. Jeff, there was no slowing down the Gavin Williams hype train at this point. I think everybody has bought in, and I want to get into this more too when we talk about the AL battle, but another strong outing from Gavin Williams, 50% whiff rate on the fastball. The White Sox, who are still going to be the worst team in the league this year, they took 22 swings against his fastball. They missed 11 times. I'm going to go ahead and say that is not good, Jeff. Do you think it's not good? It's good for Gavin.
I think it's very good for Gavin. So since that's a person I actually care about, then yeah, to me that's excellent.
We just got you to care about spring training stats. Look at that. See how easy that was?
I don't know if I say would care. I'm just saying it's we are continuing to look at Gavin Williams and look at positive traits, and a lot of very smart people are jumping on this hype train, and I think we just I understand why we're seeing, and the other thing in fairness is we saw this hype a year ago. Hopefully he'll keep it going, and he'll have health, and he'll kind of take that step forward that a lot of people were hoping he would make last year. But I mean, he was not good last year. Let's be very honest. He was statistically at a negative WAR. They could not count on him at all. So if he can get anywhere remotely close to being a positive player for this team, and the way they're talking about him, it's more than just remotely close to a positive. It's a big positive. That just, it's one of the many pieces that can just completely shift how we view this rotation.
I mean, coming out of college, better than anybody, Gavin Williams was still an excellent prospect. The only thing that people had him dropping down boards and not being on boards was a health concern. And none of those health concerns were elbow or arm related. They were back related. So
Mhm.
if a healthy Gavin Williams, I think for sure gives you another top 20 arm in baseball. Maybe I think it can compete for one of the best 1-2 punches at the top of the rotation, and that's without a healthy Shane Bieber right now. So I think things are really good. This week the Guardians have a split squad game, so you're going to see Ben Lively and Tristan McKenzie pitch. I think Joey Cantillo is going to pitch. We know Tanner Bybee is throwing on a backfield game this week as well. And before we get into our discussion about the American League and where it is wide open and where the Guardians stand in that picture, as far as the open roster spots, Jeff, second base, I don't think has gone anywhere in a direction. Like, I mean, it's just, I think it's Gabriel Arias until, it's at this point, he's winning it by default, not necessarily stats. I happened to go through and pull up some spring training data from Savant because I saw some people sorting through like bat speed, exit velocity, all that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
Gabriel Arias this spring, bat speed wise, is number one at 78.4 miles an hour, which is, right in line with what he's done before. So I saw that and I was like, oh, that's great. Gabriel Arias' bat speed is good. Exactly where it was a year ago, pretty much on par with where it was a year ago. So nothing new when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like, I can't tell you how little I care about spring training bat speed. Like, it's been great to see like the bat speed of CJ Kafis, and I was surprised that Jorge Burgos was up there, and it was great to see Jason Churio had some strong bat speed numbers. But like, we've seen this before from Gabriel Arias. He does have great bat speed, and that hasn't changed a thing in the past. So I'm not letting that influence me. But at least in terms of second base, it almost feels like more like Juan Brito is struggling to make a claim, whereas Gabriel Arias is just kind of holding serve, if anything makes sense there. Will Brennan, shockingly, I mean, right field's not really an open competition. I know Brennan and Noel are sort of competing for playing time, but I think what we're going to see is, again, I think Noel could play first base or DH against lefties, and you put Tyler Freeman in center, you move Lane Thomas to right field. So I think those two guys are kind of shoo-ins. As far as the fifth starter spot, like it's Tristan McKenzie, right? And then the bullpen thing. The bullpen thing, I don't think it's. I know you're concerned about depth, and I agree with you there. But like, you only need one of them. You only need one of Allen, Cantillo, or Nikhazy in the bullpen to start, and the other options can go to AAA as your depth options.
Yeah, no, I get all of that. But at the same time, it's like, if Walters, who's pitching, and Junis who's pitching, if they're ready to go, it's that one lefty, and I think, I don't know, I feel like right now that's like, I think I've always thought that's kind of Nikhazy's best role. So like, to me, that's where I'm just kind of set up. I can, I could be wrong in it. I'm always willing to accept new ideas, but yeah, things are certainly crystallizing, right, for this team.
For opening day, at the very least. I mean,
Yeah.
as always, again, the opening day roster on March 27th is not going to be the roster on June 27th or August 27th. Always important things to remember, too. All these things are evolving. I mean, hopefully Eric Sabrowski's elbow soreness, forearm soreness subsides, and this isn't an issue, and he can come back. And hopefully Andrew Walters' bullpen session, he came through with no shoulder soreness. But these things are always, moving targets, and nothing ever stays the same. All right. The AL Central, not the AL Central, the rest of the American League, there are a lot of injuries out there. The Guardians are somewhat fortunate right now. Can they take advantage of that? We'll talk about that on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. Oh, March Madness is here. It is one of the best times of the year. This is March. It is my favorite month of the year. I do love spring training baseball. I do love March Madness. And FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That is 200 extra bucks you can use on buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, who's cutting down the necks. Unfortunately, I can't use FanDuel to bet on who is going to win the MAC tournament. I would be putting money down on Akron because that's where I went to school. But I did check, and the Guardians right now are 1,400 odds, plus 1,400 to win the American League, because we're going to talk about that today. So you can go and put some money down on that. Let's see if their odds go up a little bit with some of the other injury news in the American League. But it's a great time to use FanDuel because March Madness is, quite frankly, the best time of year. March is the best month of the year for sports. Debate me. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long. Fight me, Jeff. Is March the best sports month of the year? Yes or no? The answer is yes. You're on mute, so you obviously said yes.
No. I don't care about college basketball. I don't care. I mean, I have spring training. Everyone knows my issues. This is, no, not even.
This is as wrong as you've ever been,
no,
Jeff.
It's
this
July.
This is worse than eggnog.
You get to see where the season's going. You get the draft. You get the trade deadline, and the
trade deadline's dead anymore. Come on.
What do you mean? It's been huge for us the last 2 years. It's some of our best content.
It's great for us, but it hasn't been as fruitful for the league. Well, let us know what the best month of the year is.
Games matter by then. You kind of know where things are going.
March, you get some good golf tournaments. You got spring training. Everybody is hopeful in spring training. Everyone's hopeful. Hope springs eternal. In March, except for the White Sox, your season's not over yet, or for the White Sox or Rockies. You got March Madness. You got great golf.
I haven't watched a college basketball game in like 10 years.
College baseball's going on, too, in March.
Okay, there is that.
It's conference play time. You can't... No, you're wrong. I'm sorry. Black licorice, eggnog, those are not your worst takes. This is your worst take now. Comment below. Let Jeff know how wrong he is. Let us know, too, how wrong we are. Jeff, I'm going to say, this is not a hot take, I don't think, but I think the American League is wide open. I don't think you can look at a single team in the American League and say, this is the favorite. Everybody has warts, right? Including the Guardians, right? We don't know how the Guardians are going to score runs. It's Steven Kwan, it's Jose Ramirez, and you are hoping that bunch of the rest of the lineup has great years. You're hoping that Manzardo breaks out. You're hoping that Santana can beat Father Time. Lane Thomas wants to get paid this winter. Will Brennan wants to hold on to a job in right field, or Noel wants to hold on to a job. Bo Naylor too. Those are all guys you can believe in, but the Guardians do have rotation depth. I don't want to bank, as much as we're banking on like Gavin Williams is going to have a Cy Young season because he's been the spring training Cy Young here. I guess I equally have to be as concerned about Luis Ortiz. He just hasn't thrown enough strikes, which is concerning to me. But other than that, things look good for the Guardians. But the Yankees, like Garrett Cole, looks like he's going to have Tommy John. Giancarlo Stanton's talking about how like both of his elbows are broken and he might miss the whole season. And Grayson Rodriguez for the Orioles is on the injured list. The Rays are playing in a minor league park. The Blue Jays are a mess. No teams in the AL Central got better over the offseason. Like the Royals, I think, kind of held serve. Like they went out and added Jonathan India. He's okay, but they lost
coming
pitching
off a career year.
Yeah, the Tigers. I know they added Gleyber Torres and they brought Jack Flaherty back, and they
added Alex Cobb.
And did we talk about Alex Cobb yet? Alex Cobb's making $16 million this year. The Twins did nothing this offseason. They added some relievers, but they've got injury issues too. They got 2 bullpen guys and some pitching depth that are hurt. They've got a team that's 3 best players are constantly hurt. Royce Lewis, Brian Buxton, and Carlos Correa are constantly hurt. The White Sox are already eliminated from the race. The Astros lost Kyle Tucker.
And Bregman.
And Alex Bregman, and they traded Ryan Presley. Don't forget that. Yeah. The Mariners' offense is in the same shape as the Guardians. The Angels are the Angels. The Rangers, they're a little bit better. I do fear the Rangers a little bit if Jacob deGrom can stay healthy.
They're
but
really inconsistent though, year to year. That is such an inconsistent team.
Yeah, they are. So I don't think there's a clear-cut favorite in the AL, especially if Garrett Cole is out for the year with Tommy John and Giancarlo Stanton's out for the year. I think the Yankees were maybe the favorite, but I don't think anybody's the favorite right now. This is a wide open league, and I think the Guardians have just as good a chance as anybody else in this league, despite the fact that we have some questions about where the offense is going to come from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely concerned about some of those spots in the lineup. Once you get past the first 5, it's a lot of a hope and a prayer. But teams are beat up, and yes, the Yankees, it's not just Garrett Cole, it's Clark Schmidt being hurt yet again. It's Lucas Heel being hurt again, and they've traded away all of their pitching, all of their depth pitching the past few years. And it's like prospect wise, they're kind of running out of things to ship around. That's not a strong minor league system in general. So they do a good job in development. I'm sure they'll have something by midseason to go ahead and move. But yeah, there's a lot of teams. Like I said, Texas just really inconsistent year to year. Seattle's got pitching, but also has some health. In the division,
Kirby's hurt.
Yeah, in the division, I do think Cleveland held serve. I think incremental improvement for Kansas City, though. I mean, there's a world where that Singer for India deal blows up in their faces, like that becomes one that they regret
For
because
both teams.
yeah,
I think it could
I
blow
don't
up.
know. I think only for that because Jonathan India had a great rookie year wasn't that 2020, and then after that was below league average until last year. Like he was a player I actively was like I'd have no interest in. And Singer is a guy that I've always been, not the biggest one on, but like he's a pretty reliable like starter. You're going to be able to get innings there. But I do think Kansas City's better. Just with some of the issues they had, some of the minor improvements. I think Detroit is counting on some of those internal improvements stepping forward. I think Flaherty coming back is huge for them, though. And then, I think it's going to be about for these teams, like who avoids the biggest injuries, who
Most
finds
depth.
the young talent, and the one thing we've seen is the problem with the deadline. Just I know we're running low on segment here. It's like there isn't as much available because so many teams are now in it. Like like we talked about how Texas last year should have sold off, and then instead they waited too long and didn't have much for it. So it's it's going to be that situation where it's almost harder to find help by the time we get to deadlines because of how many teams stick around. So all these teams are going to think they have an opportunity, and outside of the Chicago White Sox, everyone's trying. I mean, Oakland's even trying anymore. So there's not a lot of options to go out and help yourself improve. So it'll be fascinating to watch, but right now it feels like, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Tampa ended up like rebounding and winning it all. I know they're in a minor league park, but it's like, that's still a talented team with a lot of pieces. Baseball is interesting because I don't know if there's any other sport that has as much variance in it. And the ability for that variance to pop, like how Texas can go from a, lotto team to a World Series to a borderline lotto team again. It's just kind of fascinating.
It is. I think I overlooked the Red Sox too. Duran should have been an all-star last year if he wasn't. Devers is Devers. They did add Bregman. It's a good, and Tristan Cassis, if he's healthy, could be pretty good. And they're the back half of their rotation. Like it's Crochet and Tanner Houck, and then they're hoping Walker Buehler of old, and Lucas Giolito's coming off TJ, and like right now, Quinn Priester might be their fifth starter. The only thing is they have the farm system; they can trade for anything they need because the farm system's so good.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a separator. I don't know.
In a weird way.
I think they might be, yeah. But I think the Guardians, in terms of pitching, and I think the fact they have some depth this year, I think puts them on playing. And the Guardians, quite frankly, have a farm system that I think they can trade from this year for anything they need, if there is anything out in the trade market. If we get there, it's just getting
all those
there
prep
is going to be
arms.
the biggest issue.
Like San Diego has shown us that those retain so much value, and you're able to. I mean, they even showed that with Clemmy last year in some of those moves. So
that was only year one, but yeah, you could still use some of them. All right, where do the Guardians stack up? We're going to talk a little bit about that, about where they stack up with other contenders in the AL Central, Central, because I do believe that this team is for all the stuff we talked about in the offseason, all the negativity at times. I don't know. I think by virtue, maybe default, that they have as much chance as anybody. So we'll get into how they stack up here in just a moment. All right, Jeff, finish this sentence for me. Tanner Bybee and Gavin Williams are the blank 1-2 punch in the American League.
That's a good question. How much do I buy in on Williams? Like I know that he is popping all over the place, that there's so many interesting articles on him, but I still kind of need to see it. So like, I'm going to say like 7th, 8th, give him a middle of the pack-ish.
I could see that. So just looking in the division in general, like obviously you have the reigning Cy Young winner, Tarek Skubal, right? The Tigers brought back Jack Flaherty. Great move by them. he was kind of iffy with the Dodgers. I think he was going through some stuff when he got traded. That's the good 1-2 punch right there. And I think there's a lot more certainty in those two right there. So I would definitely put Tarek Skubal and Jack Flaherty.
Put the White Sox ahead of them.
I would put every position on the Guardians ahead of the White Sox. There is not a single center field, and that's only if Luis Robert stays healthy. Like, there is not a single spot on the White Sox that I could put above the Guardians outside of Luis Robert if he even gets 300 plate appearances. That's like the only thing.
There's a world where catcher they end up being better. Some of the players
long term, not short term. I like Garrett Crochet. I'm not convinced Tanner Houck for the Red Sox is a great 1-2 punch.
Houck's data has been really good the past few years. Also.
It has been, and that's not to say that like, oh, you have 2 good starters that you think are really good throughout the year. Like, you need more than 2 starters. This team had 20 something odd pitchers a year ago. Was it 29 pitchers a year ago or something? And I think Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan are a great 1-2 punch. So I don't think the Guardians 1-2 punch is even the best in the AL Central. Reagan's is good. Seth Lugo's good, but he's also 35. Can he keep doing this? I don't know. So I'm with you. I don't think it's top 5, but I think it's good enough. But in terms of depth, I think, I don't know. I don't want to throw all my eggs in the Gavin Williams basket and because of spring training, and then at the same time say, well, I'm not too worried about Luis Ortiz, but I definitely would like to see his next start include a lot more strikes than he's thrown. But I think the depth is good there, and again, I think the Guardians are going to look smart for adding Junis and Paul Sewald. Paul Sewald probably needs a few more good spring outings to make me feel a little comfortable, but Brian Shaw got his head kicked in spring training how many years in a row, and he was just fine until the wheels fell off, and then until he wasn't. Although Paul Sewald is no spring chicken either. The only thing, though, that I don't think the Guardians stack up to anybody else in obviously the American League is the offense. Like, yeah, 1-2, they might not be top 5, but I think when you look at the balance of the season, yeah, you're hoping on Shane Bieber to come back and fortify their rotation. You're hoping John Means does something, and you're hoping you can develop Luis Ortiz a little better. Maybe Slade Ciccone makes an impact, although he's had a bit of a rough spring too. I think they have enough pitching I like for them to survive the war of attrition this year, pitching wise. Even if they have to battle injuries like Andrew Walters and Eric Sabrowski and Franco Alamon, it's being tested early. I think they have the arms to do it. I just think that they need a couple of bats to step up, and I think they can be on par with anybody else. I'm not saying they're going to win 100 games. They're not going to be the best team in the American League. They almost were a year ago. They almost were the best team in the American League a year ago, right? They were so close to that. I don't think they're a worse team than they were a year ago. I think they're about the same. And I think that gives them as every bit a chance to win this league as it does anybody else right now. I just don't see, again, it's going to take some offensive pieces to step up. And I'm not guaranteeing they're going to, but the more I look around the league, the more I'm like, all right, like it also makes me feel like, I wish they would have done more this offseason offensively, because it is wide open and you are coming off a really great year. So like, I'm like half optimistic that like they stack up with the rest of the contenders in the AL, but also like, because it's so wide open, maybe they should have done more offensively. I don't know what existed to that extent. You know what I mean? But like, I'm kind of now, I don't want to sit there and say I'm half in, half out. I'm not half in, but the more I look at it, the more I think, wow, like 1 or 2 offensive pieces, if they could have landed them, would have really put them in a really good spot that they could have been one of the teams this year that were favorites.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are too many people who just look at them trading big names this offseason and fixating on that. Like, this team is built to compete, and the way they're built to compete is to do some extensions, and when those extensions don't work out, to try to move on and to figure out the players where it's valuable to try to keep them, and then just keep churning young talent. And it's a very good system right now. I know we get focused on the Chase DeLauters of the world, but CJ Kafis could debut this year, and there are a lot of people who are big fans of what he's done. It's like Jonathan Rodriguez probably should get an opportunity somewhere at some point. They've got options, and it doesn't have to be that they find the everyday. They don't have to find their forever home with these people, with these players. They just have to find their Oscar Gonzalez, right? You have to find the guy who can give it to you for this year and help you out as an org. And, find the next Oscar Gonzalez, find the next Kareem Garcia, find someone who can step in. And if they end up being more than that, if it ends up being, I think, if you go back, when they got Shin-Shu Chu, I don't think he was supposed to be the everyday guy. Like, he was a sell low candidate when he came from Seattle, and he had to kind of work to get that role and to be trusted. Sometimes you find that great player, because Chu was a great player. Sometimes you have Franklin Gutierrez on the other side of it. Like, we're going to have to see how it develops, how it plays out. But the nice thing is, I felt like last year when they entered the season, there was a gap in talent. There was not a lot of players that I was looking at that felt ready to contribute last year to the big leagues. We had kind of the guys who made it in spring, and then I was like, I don't know about the next wave. There was Manzardo and there was DeLauder, but there wasn't much behind them. Now I feel like we're seeing those waves hit, and there's going to be a lot of guys going to AA, and some guys move quickly AA to AAA, and we'll have to see how it goes. But I think this team has a lot of avenues to find success and to figure out some of their holes.
Yeah, you mentioned that last thing. I think that's a great point to bring up too, is that Chase DeLauder is hurt and he won't start the year with them. And you brought up a good point off the year too, that Chase DeLauder, while spring training injuries suck, and I think injuries to the core section, we've seen like Jason Kipnis go through this too, and past spring trainings, that kind of stuff. Those are not good injuries, but it's not like this is like Chase DeLauder. It's not a foot injury. It's not a chronic thing with him that he's had in the past. Same with Franco Alamon. It's a weird fluky hip injury that's a hip hernia, and he's going to be fine. I'm pretty confident. And the Sobrowski and Walters thing, they're a little bit different. But like you said, this is not the same injury Chase DeLauder as we've seen before. It just depends on whether or not he's going to play catch up all year. You also didn't think that they were counting on Chase DeLauder to start the year. My whole calculus here is that one of the ways this team wins this year is Chase DeLauder becomes a regular in the outfield. And I think that still could happen. And this isn't the first time he's had to come back in June to start a season. And he's done it before. He's done it well. It's just a matter of, can he play June through October instead of, June, July, August, and then September gets hurt again. But in the meantime, yeah, you're right. Like, they don't have to. They've given Will Brennan enough time. Jenkinson, is still there, whatever.
Brennan's data is like identical the last 3 years. Like, he doesn't really have any sign of anything.
Yeah, like him and Will Brennan, or him and Tyler Freeman are kind of the same at this point. Like, they are just kind of like fifth outfielder, fourth outfielder types. Like, it's fine. And I say that as someone who, again, was the president of the Will Brennan fan club for multiple years. But yeah, they don't have to give those guys more time if they don't want to. Jonathan Rodriguez, even though you and I aren't super high on the swing and other things, like if he's hitting the crap out of the ball in AAA again, there's no reason he shouldn't get a chance with this door wide open. If George Valera comes back and gets healthy at some point, there's no reason he shouldn't get some run. Like, these are all former top prospects too. Rodriguez was a 3rd round pick. It's not like he doesn't have a pedigree. So like, they have opportunities open. All someone has to do, like you said, is seize them, and they can figure it out later, whether it's through a trade. And yeah, last year got like, how many of us saw David Fry playing the role that he did a year ago? Like, nobody saw that coming. And I feel much stronger about Bo Naylor. I feel much stronger about Kyle Manzardo in a full season. I at some point, someone's going to step up at second base, whether that's Arias or Brito, or if Travis Bazzana is like, I'm just too good and these guys aren't good enough. He may force the Guardians to make a decision. That's where I think you're 100% right. That's where I think there's guys that can emerge. I do have questions about like the CJ Kafis thing. You said he could debut this year. I'm like, okay, what happens to this team if CJ Kafis is playing this year? Like, that, to me, that's bad. But like, if Travis Bazzana is playing this year, if Chase DeLauder is playing this year, those are all good things. The CJ Kafis thing is much more confusing. But no, I think I'd be absolutely right. There is a wave of talent coming where you can surround Stephen Kwan, you can surround Jose Ramirez with a couple of those guys, and it is time for Kyle Manzardo to get playing time and take that next step. And Bo Naylor, it is kind of, put up or shut up time for him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are capable. They've shown it before. It's not like those guys are just like, well, this is a 15th round pick who just, made it to the majors and now we're going to see what we got. No, Bo Naylor was a first round pick. Kyle Manzardo was a top 100 prospect. Lane Thomas,
second round pick as well.
Yeah. Lane Thomas has been a 2020 guy.
Before. An all-star.
He was an all-star. So like these things can happen. They have happened before. It's just, they haven't done it all consistently. I guess it's the putting it together is the hardest part. Everything on paper looks great, but
the waiting is the hardest part.
Waiting is definitely the hardest part. If you enjoyed this AL Central talk, got great news for you, or American League talk. Tomorrow on Locked On Guardians, we're going to have one of our dear friends, and he's a great content creator in the baseball space, Rogelio I'm going to butcher your last name.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't want to butcher his last name. So Rogelio is the basically the owner and brains behind the Tigers Minor League Report. Him and Chris Brown and some other guys do a great job up there. So Rogelio is going to join us on Tuesday's episode to talk about the Detroit Tigers specifically, but we'll talk about the AL Central landscape. We did have a lot of people again asking about, do some division previews. Let's talk about the other teams. Let's talk about how the Guardians stack up there. Typically in the past, I'll be very honest, those episodes don't get a ton of viewership and listenership, but we had a lot of people who are asking for them. So we're going to oblige and give it to you. And we'll hope that everybody tunes in. And if this one does well, we'll do more. We'll find other people to fill in the gaps with Twins and the Royals. And I don't know. I don't think anyone wants to talk White Sox, do they? No one really wants to talk about the White Sox.
No, we have probably better connections with the White Sox than anyone outside of the Tigers. That's actually one of our strong
the
points.
White Sox don't know what the White
I'm probably going to end up doing 2 to 3 White Sox podcasts this year, just because of those connections. But we'll have some fun content tomorrow. This is the point in the show where I tell you to hit the thumbs up. Let me give you a question for the day. What off the beaten path prospect are you most interested in this year? So what guy who's not a top 10 are you most interested in? Comment below. Thank you for watching. Thank you to all of our everydayers, and go Guardians, go.